Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Freddy vs. Jason from 2003. Every Friday the 13th, I try to review a different Friday the 13th film in chronological order, and I have reached the 11th film, Freddy vs. Jason. The idea of doing a Freddy vs. Jason film had been around for quite a while. In fact, it had been infecting the Friday the 13th franchise since about New Blood, which was part 7, and had kept being brought up in development. There were many times where Paramount and New Line, when Friday the 13th was at Paramount, and of course Nightmare on Elm Street famously being at New Line, were trying to work out a deal and neither could work it out until Paramount sold Friday the 13th to New Line, and then it seemed like it was of course going to happen, but it took a very long time. It took about 15 years. They spent about $6 million on various screenplays to make a Freddy vs. Jason, and no one could quite get their handle on it. There was one with like a cult called the Fred Heads that was going to bring back Freddy Krueger and all sorts of nonsense. One of them was one where Freddy Krueger was a counselor at Camp Crystal Lake and molested Jason, and they were going to have a battle or something. Although I kind of like that idea. And it was originally called A Nightmare on Friday the 13th, but eventually they actually got this film that was long rumored and long discussed, very publicly in fact. People were talking about a Freddy vs. Jason movie happening, at least the entire time people were aware of it possibly happening, ever since you saw Jason show up in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and as soon as you saw Freddy show up in the Friday the 13th franchise, you knew it was eventually going to happen, and it did with this movie. And this movie, it's much better of a fan fiction idea than the actual movie itself, which is not that great on either the Nightmare on Elm Street or the Friday the 13th side. It just kind of doesn't exactly work that well, and it's kind of like two existing franchises that have had a lot of movies coming together to make one movie doesn't exactly work. You don't get in exactly a Friday the 13th film, you don't get a Nightmare on Elm Street film, you get this weird mishmash. It has a lot of ideas it has to present, it has to kind of do both at once, and in its execution, and very poorly by director Ronnie Yu, it kind of makes neither, and you just get a brightly colored early 2000s crappy event horror film. In Springwood, Ohio, where the kids used to be haunted by Freddy Krueger in their dreams, everyone has forgotten about him, especially the teenagers, and Freddy Krueger can no longer haunt them in their dreams, so he brings back Jason to start haunting them and putting fear into their minds, and people starting to think Freddy Krueger is back. Unfortunately, when he wakes Jason back up and brings Jason back, Jason of course kills too many people, and he's ruining all of Freddy Krueger's fun. So Freddy Krueger of course wants to come back and stop Jason from killing too many of his teens, so he can in fact kill them. And also there's a dumb plot with a bunch of teenagers that's really stupid and ruins the whole movie. This is made at New Line, and New Line is famously called the house that Freddy built. Bob Shea, who has a little cameo as the principal in this film, he clearly prefers Freddy Krueger and the Nightmare films, and so a lot of people felt that this film is more of a Nightmare on Elm Street film than it is a Friday the 13th film. And I don't really agree, but I kind of think they treat the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise a lot better than the Friday the 13th franchise. A lot of people don't even count this as a Friday the 13th film, but as I have done all the other Friday the 13th films, I'm at least counting it. But it doesn't really do either franchise justice, and you kind of can't. It's not like an Avengers movie where these characters exist to team up together. These are two characters who have well-established rules in their universe and histories and multiple films. I mean, this is the 8th Nightmare on Elm Street film, this is the 11th Friday the 13th film, and the franchises are almost genres within themselves, and crossing them over didn't really work, and so you don't really get a Nightmare on Elm Street film, you don't really get a Friday the 13th film, and that's kind of the biggest problem with it. It just treats the Freddy Krueger stuff better. You really get Robert Englund, which is great, and he does a great performance. I wish they didn't have a really stupid echo on him the whole time. Like, honestly, I had to rewind parts because I was like, what did he just say? Why is he so echoey? I wouldn't have mind more of a mid Nightmare on Elm Street kind of Freddy where he's jokey and silly, like Freddy Krueger from The Dream Master, that kind of Freddy Krueger. But instead we get this one that is kind of from New Nightmare, is kind of a little more serious, but he's not as jokey. He's not as funny and punny for my taste. And even Jason, who they don't get Kane Hodder, who he had played Jason, like Jason Lives, New Blood, Jason Takes Manhattan, all the ones where Jason becomes an invincible movie monster that no one can kill. And he really should have been the Jason in this film. There's all sorts of reasons they want to take Jason a different way. No one's exactly sure. The height of the two monsters was off, which they could have corrected. Some people say it's the director Ronnie Yu. You don't really get the kind of team up you really want. It's the later versions of these two characters fighting one another. But when you think about it, there was no way it was going to be a great movie. I mean, Freddy's more in the dream world. Jason, it's more realistic and such. Well, they're both kind of fun roller coaster ride horror movies, and I definitely understand there were the two big horror movie icons of the 80s fighting one another in one movie. And certain sequences actually are cool. Certainly when Jason, there's a rave sequence which is completely ridiculous, and Jason's on fire. There's a bunch of kids in this kind of crop circle of a rave. Like literally, I think it's in a crop circle. Maybe that's how crop circles happen. I don't know. But so Jason comes and he starts like just randomly killing people. I've read in other reviews, people say that's probably what should have happened in Jason Takes Manhattan. And even people who hate this movie love that sequence because it's very much like Jason just likes killing people. And there's a lot of good kills from Jason in just that sequence. But the film never really has an awesome team up with Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees the way it really should. It keeps playing with this dumb plot with teens, which really does not work at all. It's like all this backstory to it that they have to explain how like this guy walked in on his girlfriend's dad killing his mom, but she was covering up because Freddy Krueger or something. I don't really understand. The teen stuff didn't work. It does have Jason Ritter, who would later play Dipper Pines on Gravity Falls, and he plays a very kind of Dipper apart character. It is kind of interesting seeing him do kind of a horror type of role. And then Kelly Rowland, who is of course from Destiny's Child, who is okay. She kind of plays up the sassy black character a little too much. It's kind of a little annoying after a while. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing with a lot of this movie and what Ronnie Yu thought he was doing. It just wants to take from both these worlds but not understand either of them. Freddy vs. Jason becomes a pretty forgettable part of either franchise. It was a big event. Everyone wanted it to happen. Everyone wanted to see it. It had a huge opening weekend and it had been rumored forever. But I wish there had been like maybe a better director. I know this was actually offered to Peter Jackson because at the time Peter Jackson was a big New Line person. I think Bob Shaye actually really cared about this film. He really wanted it to be the event that everyone hoped it would be. I don't think there's any way it could live up to it. I'm sure there's a better fan fiction version of this story somewhere. Freddy vs. Jason just fails from being kind of a dumb idea. It's sad that this is the last film in either franchise. After this, both of them would be rebooted in their next incarnations, but there was no other way to take it. You know, Jason had already gone to space at this point. Nightmare on Elm Street had done Wes Craven's New Nightmare and done its kind of postmodern critique on itself. There wasn't really anywhere you could go except do this. No one even really saw Jason X, which actually chronologically I guess takes place after this film, but whatever. I mean, not chronologically in terms of release, in terms of the canon of Jason Voorhees stuff. It just kind of shows two horror icons who were at the end of their ropes. It's sad that this is the end of Robert Englund playing Freddy Krueger. It's a bad way for Jason to go out, and then it would be completely rebooted. And it plays more like a big dumb event, but its biggest problem is focusing so much on these teens that I just don't really care about it. I like Jason Ritter. I like a few of the actors in it. This is supposed to be a dumb, excessively violent type of movie, and it certainly has its moments, but it just doesn't like give you what exactly you want as an audience member from something like this. It just plays too stupid. And then the fight sequences are shot like apparently Ronnie Yu sped up the camera for that, so the action sequences would be more thrilling and different, which really does not work. It just feels like bad 2000s filmmaking. And then when they fight, it feels like a wrestling match and doesn't take advantage of the way each of the characters really are. They don't really establish whether Freddy Krueger has all his powers in the dream world or out of the dream world, so it doesn't feel like that much of a crazy fight. And there's some wire work in this for some reason. It just felt like he was the complete wrong director for this. I wish, because Sean S. Cunningham and Wes Craven were friends for a long time before they made either of these franchises, I wish they both had a lot more to do with this. Although Sean S. Cunningham is credited as a producer and did help develop this a lot, neither I think were involved by the time this film was shooting. I heard so much about this film over the years, and after watching all the Friday the 13th films, I know I would come to the point where I'd have to watch Freddy vs. Jason. It's just very disappointing, and I know a lot of Friday the 13th fans don't like it. And it's not that it's too much of a Freddy film, I just think they didn't care much about the Jason part of it at all. They should have played up more of the invincible Jason role. They'd spent so much money on it and worked on it for so long, and this was kind of the peak of New Line. New Line were going to win all all those Oscars later that year with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. This is the year that Return of the King would come out. It was kind of the peak of Bob Shaye and New Line. So a lot of this was kind of a studio play. I think he got phased out. I'm not exactly sure, but soon after that. This is kind of something that should happen under his watch. And it feels like it kind of just happened because it needed to happen at the time. Apparently Rob Zombie turned this down also. I wish they'd work with a director who could really have fun with it, but also I think Jason, it would have made more sense if he fought like Leatherface or Michael Myers or somebody in the real world. Freddy vs. Jason, I'm not exactly sure why anyone thought it was a great idea. They can't fight each other. Like, wouldn't Freddy really fight like the Candyman or something? Like, it just doesn't feel right. I know they've talked about doing Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, which I am very open to. I think Ash would work with Freddy Krueger. It's kind of like that surreal, kind of crazy style. You don't get a lot of surreal Freddy stuff in this, like that dumb stoner moment, which was awful, and some stuff with the sleeping ward. It tries to be a fun, dumb horror movie, but its overuse of CG is definitely a problem. It doesn't play up the fun as much. There are too many styles going on at once, and then it just doesn't really create anything, and that's really a shame. This should have been a big, epic, fun, stupid horror movie, and it just comes out stupid. Like, it just got the stupid part. It got none of the fun and the thrill ride, and everything that made 80s horror fun was that they're fun, gory, silly, stupid movies, and this just got the silly, stupid part. I wish Freddy vs. Jason had been more, and I think everyone else does. When it happened, I think it showed everyone like, wow, this was a tremendously awful idea, and we should never ever do this again. I think it just shows most of these team ups are more fan servicey, which is another reason they should have had Kane Hodder in this movie, because if you're doing it for the fans, you might as well not piss them off, but whatever. It should be more of a dumb fan servicey silly thing rather than whatever this was. It was just too many ideas that came together and didn't really say anything at all. It just wanted to be an event, but it didn't really come up with a way to keep that event interesting. And that's all it really was. It was just kind of an empty, stupid event without all the stupid fun. And who wants to see an 80s horror movie without stupid fun when it's just plain stupid? So if you have seen Freddy vs. Jason and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And my next Friday the 13th review, which will be the Friday the 13th reboot, will be on Friday, May 13th, 2016. And to my understanding, that will be the last one. There's supposed to be another Friday the 13th movie coming out the Friday the 13th after that, which would be January 13th, 2017. We'll see if that happens. I can't guarantee anything happening then. But on May 13th, 2016, I will put out the final installment in my Friday the 13th review series. If there will be one after that, that is up to the studios and if I can review one, but the final one will be then. Thank you very much for watching. If you have continued watching this Friday the 13th review series over the years, or if you're new to it or whatever, I hope to see you on Friday, May 13th, 2016, and I hope you have a good and happy Friday the 13th and stay out of trouble.